This morning, the Taliban takes over, chaotic scenes as thousands try to flee, many now living in fear of the regime's possible acts of retribution for their support for the war that lasted almost 20 years. And it's our fault. Genomic testing confirms the latest outbreak in New Zealand is linked to the evolving New South Wales cluster. Today, Thursday, the 19th of August, 2021. And good morning, welcome to Press Gallery this Thursday. Also coming up, Nationals leader Barnaby Joyce has taken aim at one of his colleagues seeking to link the Taliban to a domestic debate about climate change. But first, we turn to the evolving situation out of Afghanistan. Over the last few days, images of chaotic scenes at Kabul airport emerged, showing the desperation of some to flee the country now under Taliban control. On Tuesday, the Prime Minister agreed that things were deteriorating quickly, conceding that support won't reach all that it should. Evacuations are now underway, though details are still unconfirmed about just how many evacuees Australia will carry. I spoke to Patrick Ryan, formerly of the Australian Embassy in Kabul. I spoke to him earlier in the week about 196 of his colleagues who supported Australian troops throughout the two-decade war. Patrick, thanks so much for your time. How many of the contacts on the ground of yours have been assured that they'll be evacuated? And if so, likely when?
Well, thank you for having me, Christian. It's great to be here. There's still 196 of the former embassy workers on the ground in Kabul awaiting evacuation. And at this stage, the government hasn't given any clear indication about when that might be or who might be included in the evacuation mission. They have sent mixed messages even today about that.
So they haven't been given any assurances that they'll be evacuated at all?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. There are mixed messages coming from the government where the government has previously said, the Prime Minister has said that every effort will be made to evacuate these guys.
Yeah, I think so. The Prime Minister said today that the support needed won't reach everybody who needs it. What does that mean for the people who do need it? And what is life going to be like for them living under the Taliban control, having supported the Australian mission for the last 2 decades?
Well, the Taliban are very clear in their message about what will happen to those who have worked for foreigners. They're considered to be servants of the infidel, and they will be punished for their betrayal of Islam and the Sharia. We only need to look at what has happened in Kandahar in recent weeks since it fell to see what will happen in the fullness of time in Kabul. It's likely these men only have if we weren't to rescue them, they may only have a matter of weeks or perhaps a month or two before the Taliban goes back to its standard MO or pre-2001 of purging the country of anyone who is seen as disloyal to their brand of radical Islam.
There are reports, Patrick, that the Taliban is door knocking, asking people, or should I say, looking for foreigners. What can you say about that?
Well, yes, they are. I mean, I had messages this morning from my former personal assistant, who's a very sound individual and extremely courageous, and he was sounding very worried because he said the Taliban are door knocking, looking for those who have worked for foreigners. They're also looking for business people who may have large sums of money. And they're also raiding the banks. So it's fairly clear that the Taliban are cash-strapped. They're looking to set up a new economy, and they're prepared to rob people, and they're also prepared to purge the country of the people I spoke about just in your previous question. These are not the hallmarks of, good government or people with a humanitarian track record.
You were on the ground in Afghanistan, being there and living there, and now seeing the images that are coming out of Afghanistan at the moment. What do you make of those images, especially the ones at the airport?
Well, Christian, as you would gather, somebody like myself who goes to work in conflict zones like Kabul has seen human desperation, and not just in one country or conflict zone. I haven't seen that level of human desperation of people clinging to, aircraft on climb out since I witnessed 9/11 back in 2001. 20 years ago, where people were jumping out of the World Trade Center rather than being burnt to death. Now, if a human being is terrified of being burnt to death, then a human being is equally terrified of the Taliban if they're going to cling to an aircraft and plunge to their death as well.
There were truly tragic scenes. Patrick, what should the Australian government or all governments be doing to ensure that those who helped us for the last 2 decades put a government there, try and put stability there rather? What should Australia be doing to ensure that these people are safe?
I think the government is now a victim of its own failure to plan and act to protect our mission essential personnel, with whom none of their efforts in Afghanistan would have amounted to anything. They were the enablers of our mission there, whether they were ADF interpreters or whether they were embassy guards or even the people who were cooking and cleaning for us at the embassy. Without them, we'd have had no supply into our facilities there. We wouldn't have been able to build the buildings.
So these are local people who wanted to support the mission toward a more democratic way of life and did their part, I suppose, and now have lost all of that backing. That's what they're going through now.
Yeah, mate, you've nailed it. I mean, these people, after years of oppression and war at the hands of the Russians, and even going back further to 1975, they have hope, and they went to work for the occupying force with a vision, with a view that their country would be stable and grow like the rest of the world, of maybe a 40-year recovery period like that after the Vietnam War. And could see that there was a path forward that was going to be enabled by the occupation, by the coalition forces and all of the aid and development organisations that go with that. And now all of that has been cast aside. They've been betrayed. When you ask me what our government can do about it, try and conclude the situation, try and achieve the withdrawal with some degree of dignity. At this late hour, to be quibbling over, who should be evacuated and on what basis surrounding our migration legislation or any other, contrived sort of argument, to fail at this late point to recognise that this is anything other than a desperate humanitarian evacuation is a delusion.
Yeah, hold up our end of the bargain to keep things stable. Patrick, thanks so much for your time. We hope that everything works out for the best and that your 196 colleagues do seek safety. For our full interview with Patrick Ryan, head to our website. Over the last 2 days, coalition forces have worked quickly to evacuate people from Kabul. A plane carrying more British nationals and Afghans arrived in England on Tuesday night as evacuations continue. A French flight carrying just 41 people who were evacuated from Kabul arrived at a Paris airport on Tuesday as well. A plane carrying Afghan evacuees arrived at Frankfurt airport on Wednesday morning. The plane is one of 3 special Lufthansa flights bringing Afghan evacuees to Germany. Well, just over 3 hours ago, Melbourne's curfew ended, but tonight it will return for the 4th night in a row. It was reintroduced for the first time since 2020 as part of a wide range of new restrictions that also includes the closure of children's playgrounds and a ban on drinking alcohol outdoors. But even as COVID-19 cases in Victoria continue to rise, there's criticism coming from both sides that the nighttime rules are unnecessary. Late last night, I spoke and caught up with our chief anchor Leonardo Puglisi on the ground from Melbourne.
Yeah, good evening, Christian. 24 new local cases in Victoria today. Concerning, but obviously much better than the situation you guys have in New South Wales. The main concern, however, is the St Kilda cluster. We've got many unlinked cases, dozens of exposure sites listed by the Department of Health. One of those cases, according to the Health Minister, Martin Foley, was a sex worker in the St Kilda area, which is sparking a lot of concern again surrounding those mystery cases. This is all coming as new restrictions are imposed for the state, for Melbourne rather. That includes that nighttime curfew between 9 p.m. and 5 a.m. local time. It's around 15 minutes before the curfew kicks in right now, so I'll be heading inside soon. But that has sparked a bit of controversy because authorities did announce, and I'm near a tram line, but it's completely empty. Authorities did announce that they would not be running public transport services like trams and trains on Friday and Saturday nights post-curfew, sparking concern for the essential workers like healthcare workers who are still working those overnight and those late night shifts and do not have their own form of transport to get home. The other thing that caused controversy that was closed in this recent round of extra restrictions was kids' playgrounds. Now, while we haven't really seen any cases linked to kids' outbreak, kids' playgrounds rather, they are closed. Police, however, do say they won't be patrolling the area. Only in extreme circumstances they will be handing out fines for people at playgrounds, for example, if there was a large gathering there. So again, 24 new local cases in Victoria. Cases still rising, way too early to determine whether the extended lockdown for Melbourne will lift in early September, as is the current plan. We'll have to see how many cases we get, whether they're all linked, and of course when we want to ease these restrictions as New South Wales continues their lockdown, so does the Northern Territory, the ACT and now New Zealand. So I'll be heading inside too before this curfew kicks in, but we will continue to monitor all the developments out of Victoria and right across the country.
And at 6 News, we want to hear what you have to say. You can join the conversation on Twitter using hashtag 6NewsAU. We'll share your thoughts on Australian politics. If you have any questions or anything you'd like us to dive into, head to our website 6newsau.com and contact us. Nationals leader Barnaby Joyce has criticised his friend and colleague Matt Canavan for asking whether the Taliban would sign up Afghanistan to a net zero carbon emission policy. The Deputy Prime Minister said, "Matt is my friend and I've conveyed that a focus should be empathy and action for Afghanistan, undivided by other issues." Former Nationals leader Michael McCormack was also critical of Canavan's comments, saying they were disappointing, insensitive and unnecessary. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern confirmed at a press conference yesterday morning the COVID-19 case that sent New Zealand into a new lockdown originated in New South Wales. New Zealand went into a strict nationwide lockdown on Wednesday following news it had now 5 cases of COVID-19 in the community. Following an initial 8-week pause on the Trans-Tasman bubble and the Ardern government's strict border lockdown, it is unlikely that travel will resume between the two countries until 2022. And that is Press Gallery for this week. Thank you so much for your company. Leo will have 6 News this Sunday from 8 p.m, so join him for that. I'm Christian Penny. I hope you have a great day.